Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas, but who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Billie Thrash, it is a real honor to have you sitting across the table from me here in the rehearsal studio of Carpenter Square Theater.
Well, thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here. Carpenter Square is kind of dear to my heart, actually.
Well, let's explore that. But first, let's get your story, and then we'll migrate up to Carpenter Square Theater.
How much do you want to know?
Well, where were you born and raised?
In a little town in Kansas called Ellis, Kansas.
Never heard of it.
Well, if you travel I-70 on your way to Colorado, you'll go right past Ellis. And
Okay.
most people do go right past Ellis.
So after high school, you went to college where?
At Fort Hays State College, which is now Fort Hays State University, which is in Hays, which is just about 13 miles away from my hometown. So, it's very, very convenient. And I did that. And so basically, I'm a sunflower from the Sunflower State. And there you go.
So when you were in college, did you live at home and then commute?
No, I stayed down at the university, even though it was so close. But I wanted the full college experience.
Yes.
And,
Good.
a lot of my friends did commute, but because it certainly was an easy one, but I wanted to be right in the big middle of the whole collegiate experience. So,
What was your major?
speech and drama.
Okay. Which was probably all that was available to you back then.
Right. There was no such thing as, they had a music department and a theater department and not a music theater department. But if you were in theater and could audition through to music, you could still do some of the musicals and all of that. And so I was also at that time working at a dance studio. So I was,
As a teacher?
as a teacher, yeah. I taught tap.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, I learned, even in my little tiny baby town, I had a cousin who was a dancer. And there are people out there who will understand what I mean when I say she had a garage school, which, in her garage. And so from the time I was like 5 years old, I was taking tap.
So were you in any of the productions in college?
A few. I did a couple of the musicals. I was just so involved with other things at the university. Well, at the college then.
Right.
Well, I'm going to call it the university.
Of course.
Anyway, because it is now.
And who's going to say you can't?
Well, there'll be somebody. Trust me. There'll be somebody. Billy, you had that all wrong. Get it right. Because I was teaching on the weekends, and our school was not just in Hays, Kansas. She had 2 studios in other towns that we would travel to over the weekend to teach dance classes. So it was the Marla Folkert School of Dance. And so anyway, I wasn't available to rehearse.
In the school productions?
In the school productions.
Yes.
And that's, where I got into choreography, because our faculty was on, we did choreography, directing, et cetera, at some of the local high schools. So I was on that side of things, even though I was a performer. But I did a couple of the Fort Hays musicals.
Did you have any starring roles in any of those?
No, not in college.
All right. So after college, now my experience with you starts with Carpenter Square Theater in the mid '80s, mid 80s when the theater was started. But you had a lot to do between college and the mid 80s. Do you want to say when you graduated from college?
When did I graduate from college? 1964.
Okay. All right.
Don't start doing the math.
Well, it's an honor to be at the age we are, and so there we go. I won't do the math. I won't say any numbers. Where did you go after college?
Well, I took a teaching job in Kansas City, and I did that for a year before I realized that maybe teaching at that time was not for me.
What kind of teaching?
Well, it was at a junior high, and I taught speech and English.
Okay.
And that sort of thing. And I had family in Kansas City, and I was very comfortable in the area. But I just really, I really loved the classes and the students and all of that. But they didn't do any theater there. It was a junior high, and they didn't do.
Sure.
In fact, I got something started there that they had never done before. I went, if we're going to study this, let's do the play about it.
Yes.
And, but it was, not part of their curriculum. It was just something they let me sneak in and do. So anyway, but I really just didn't feel at home there. I don't know how to explain it other than that. So I had this scathingly brilliant idea. During the time I was in college, because of my affiliation with the dance studio and all of that, we would go to these dance conventions that were held here, there, and everywhere, everywhere from right there in Kansas and Kansas City or even Detroit. We went to Detroit, Michigan one time to just study with all these different dance teachers. And I had met during those travels Bill Graham, who had a studio here in Oklahoma City.
I remember that name.
The Bill Graham Tap Studio.
Yes.
And you probably know a young woman named Barbara Berard.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he had three tappers that he would take with him to these dance conventions. And I got to know them, and we became good friends. And plus, his tap work was phenomenal. He came out of the old days when the big bands had tap stars.
Yes.
And doing all of that. And his work was just phenomenal. And I thought, well, maybe I'll move to Oklahoma City, and then at least on Saturday mornings I can take tap class and be happy, and we'll see what else happens in my world.
Yeah. So you took the job and you moved to Oklahoma City?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a job. I just packed up. My folks were going, Billy, well, I had been teaching, so they were paying me through the summer, because that's how they spaced out paying for teaching then. So at least I had income until August, and I had to find a job. And I did at Channel 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was that job?
I was news secretary.
News secretary.
And that was back when there weren't these big news departments. Channel 4 had a big news department, but not everybody else. But Channel 5 did do news, and they need somebody there to answer the phones and pass the word and do all of those things. It's also where I met a certain guy named Bill Thrash.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. What a great guy. I do miss him so much. And I know
me too.
You too. Oh, gosh. In my mind, before I knew anything about how you two met, and it wasn't much, but in my mind, I had conjured up this fantasy that you two had met in college and were campus darlings and entertained everybody at all the frat parties. And then I found out, well, it was at a TV station.
It was. That's where it was. And, one of probably the best decisions I made in my life was to move to Oklahoma City. Because all of the good things that have happened to me happened here.
I feel the same way about myself.
Yeah.
So you ultimately married Bill.
Yep.
What year?
Oh, gee.
Okay, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You two married.
1968.
Okay. How long were you the news secretary, and what came
Well,
next?
I was there about a year, but I had also taken a lot of writing courses in college and all of that, and I was hired by an ad agency. So after a year of being news secretary, and at that time, the Channel 5 news department was expanding greatly, and they were, they brought in new newscasters and all of that kind of thing. It was starting to become a pretty big operation.
And this is when the station was located at 63rd and Portland.
Yes, at 60, which is now some sort of a medical facility.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, 63rd and Penn. So
Portland.
63rd and Portland, right?
Yeah.
I knew one of those streets with a P.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had this opportunity to join an ad agency as a copywriter.
Nice.
So, I've had so many different careers.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Which is fabulous.
you figured I had to be good at something.
Exactly.
So there we go.
How long were you at the ad agency?
I did that for about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened for you to make the leap to performing, I know, with Lyric and other places and going up, Papermill Playhouse, is that?
Papermill, that was way down the road.
Okay, all right.
Way down the road. But after I got here, because of my interest and because of my association with the Bill Graham Dance Studio, his people were a lot of those that were performing at various theaters and all of that. And I got into, my very first show was at the Jewel Box Theater Amphitheater.
Okay.
And I was the world's, at that time, because by that time I'd been out of college a few years and all of that. I was the world's oldest living teenager. But I did Bye Bye Birdie there.
Oh, nice.
But it was through all these connections I had made through the dance department and other things and the people that I met along the way. And that's how I kind of got started in performing here in Oklahoma.
Started at Jewel Box Amphitheater.
Right. Oh, and getting back to Kansas City, the one I did do a show at a community theater in Kansas City, Kansas.
Okay.
Did one show, Dirty Work at the Crossroads. It was a musical. Of course it was. But then I didn't do much after I moved here until I made the connection with the Jewel Box.
And then what other theater companies did you work with back then? This would be the early 70s now.
Be the
right?
early 70s. Basically, it was Jewel Box.
Okay.
That I was really involved with. And, it wasn't until, the 80s when, there were all these other theaters popping up like Carpenter Square.
Yeah.
1984?
1984. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got involved at Carpenter Square, not as a performer, but as a choreographer.
I remember, yeah. What was your first show?
My first show choreographing was the inimitable Rocky Horror Show.
Aha! And let me just remind listeners that Carpenter Square Theater premiered Rocky Horror Show in Oklahoma City.
Well, of course it did. I mean,
there was no one else to do it.
No one else could do it.
and it was so risque. And I think we've done that show 5 times, I was told.
Probably so. I did the first 2. I choreographed the first 2 alongside Richard Lemin, now a longtime dear friend.
Yeah. So I seem to recall that you've also performed with Lyric. Is that true?
Oh, I've done a lot of Lyric shows.
Okay. I thought so.
And so I didn't start that until, don't ask me when the transition was made because I was doing all these other things. My job was very all-encompassing.
This is still at the ad agency?
At the ad agency. Had a lot going like that. I still did an occasional Jewel Box show. And then one day, because Lyric Theater was kind of, I can only say one step, not necessarily a step up, because Jewel Box certainly did some great stuff, but it was a different kind of thing. And I had, of course, gone to see all the shows and everything. And one day steeled up and put myself on the line.
Yeah.
And then I've done about 10 shows at Lyric.
Wow. Do you recall
over time?
Do you recall your first one?
Promises, very small role.
Okay.
I was Sheldrake's secretary. And / ensemble, little dancing and all that kind of stuff. So
in the years, let's break it down by theater. Since you started at Jewel Box, let's go there first. Do you have a favorite Jewel Box show that you've either performed in or directed?
Oh, wow. Well, one of the favorite shows at Jewel Box that I performed in was Chicago.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What was your role?
What was my role? Oh, golly. See, I told you this was going to happen. I was going to blank out. The Cheetah Rivera role.
Oh, okay. Is that Velda?
Velma. Velma Kelly.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry, I'm brain dead.
It's quite all right. It comes, that it happens.
But it was really fun. But I did lots of others plays as well as musicals, and I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, at Jewel Box, then I got into directing them myself. So
yeah. So what was a favorite directing show that you did?
At Jewel Box?
Yeah. You're still directing there. You just recently did a show.
And, I haven't directed at Jewel Box in a while. Well, yeah.
Really?
No, excuse me, I take that back. The Sweet Delilah Swim Club.
That's right. That's right. That was earlier this season? Or
Well, it was last season.
Last season, okay.
Last season.
So just for record-keeping purposes, for those of you keeping score, we're recording this in early June of 2025. So Sweet Delilah Swim Club was in 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it was one time called the Dixie Swim Club.
Right.
Which I had done earlier.
Oh, really?
Years before they changed the title. But it's always been one of my favorites. But I did a lot of choreography, working with other directors at Jewel Box, and then started, directing some of the plays and other musicals. Over the time, I've gotten to meet, I was been very lucky, the Martha Knotts and the Jane Halls and all of these incredible people that are part of the history of Oklahoma City theater.
I did a show with Martha Knott at Jewel Box, Light Up the Sky, simply because Martha called me and asked me to audition.
Oh, yeah. She was something.
And I thought, I'm not passing up an opportunity to work with Martha Knott. My goodness.
I mean, she was just something. And Jane, of course, was... Well, she was kind of the queen of Oklahoma City theater.
Sure.
Because she had started long before I had moved to Oklahoma, back in the tent shows days and all of that, Martha as well.
Yeah.
And so anyway, just a lot of, I can't pick a favorite thing that I've done anywhere just because for various and sundry reasons, each one was special.
So let's go in the other direction. Is there a show that you were so glad to get that final performance out of the way?
Trying to think. I don't think there was anything I hated that much. There were some, I don't want to mention names because then there would be a couple of people that would go, she hated that show?
Right.
I didn't. There was nothing I hated. There were some I enjoyed doing a lot more than others.
Okay.
Let me put it diplomatically
That's a very
like that.
safe way to put that.
And, sometimes you have a scathingly brilliant idea and then you go, what the heck was I thinking?
Right.
Everybody has those days.
Sure.
So, it's not just because of the play itself or the people in it or sometimes it's just you.
So at Carpenter Square, and you've been around since the very first season, and like we said, choreographing the first production of Rocky Horror Show in Oklahoma.
Well, of course, we were young. We were ready to tackle the world and show them what was out there.
Bring it on.
Do all of these things. Richard, however, for some reason, even though I knew the show, I did know the show, but I didn't know all of those throw-in lines that the audience does.
Oh, yeah.
So Richard schooled me so that I didn't not know, wait a minute, they're going to throw toast here.
Right. Exactly.
So, those kind of things. So he schooled me in that because I didn't know the stage play that well.
Right.
I'd seen the film.
Yes.
But that's another whole ball game.
That is, totally different. Is there a favorite from Carpenter Square over the years?
Oh,
directing or choreographing?
Gosh, I've done
so many.
So many. I will always treasure. Well, Carpenter Square was known for kind of doing firsts.
Yes.
We were the first kids on the block to do a chorus line.
Yes. I remember.
And that is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the first shows in the second location.
In the one on Hudson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, now I was here during the Carpenter Square opening of when they were just first opening,
right.
Like the one at the original
Robert S. Kerr, the Carpenter
Paper Company thing.
Yeah.
And of course, holes in the roof.
Yeah. Buckets.
Frigid weather.
Oh, yeah.
An ice skating rink on the stage like that. And then when we did the switch over to the Hudson location, and Chorus Line was to open that.
I thought so.
Well, we didn't have an opening night because something went awry with the electricity.
Oh. Something was always going wrong with that place.
I mean, there was stuff happening. So anyway, I was going, I don't think I ever want to work an opening night for Carpenter Square ever again, even though the shows were enormously successful.
Yeah.
But, we were always dealing with a problem.
Right.
And so it was, but it was just pretty exciting times because now everybody can do just about everything. But Carpenter Square was able to, best little whorehouse in Texas, which is one of the favorite things that I was ever involved in. And and the year we brought in Chad and Jeremy to do Pump Boys and Dinettes.
Yes.
And I was the right age for Chad and Jeremy. I was a big fan of their pop music that, was top 40 over earlier years and all of that. And that was interesting.
So how were they to work with?
They were great, actually.
Good.
They were very, very good to work with, but they had a couple of surprises. They flew. Carpenter Square's facility was not optimal for performers.
No.
Not at that time in that space.
Right.
This was the original space.
Right. There was no restroom
backstage. There were no restrooms backstage.
Yes.
And, just a few little things like that. So I'm trying to remember, what the deal was with and of course, they had a contract where, and we got permission, from they got permission to perform in a non-equity facility and do all of that. So all of that was free, clear, wonderful, except there were some provisions in the contract, like either that Chad and Jeremy, each one had to have their own dressing room.
Of course.
Well,
there was one dressing room backstage.
There was one dressing room backstage. And, we had some, the
dividers and curtains and,
and stuff like that. But anyway, so it was, they were troopers about it.
Great.
They were really troopers about it. I have no idea what conversations went on with Scott and them. I wasn't party to that.
Scott being the executive director, producer.
Well, he was the one that started,
Right.
Carpenter Square.
Scott Myers.
Scott Myers, yeah. And he was the one with the scathingly brilliant idea to do that, which it was. It was just, but starting up was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. But so, there were lots of things that I really enjoyed. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. We had Jody Miller in that.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
And,
I don't think I ever knew that
yeah,
before.
she was Robin's mom, Robin Brooks' mom.
Yeah.
And
did she play the
no,
madam?
she didn't know.
Oh.
That was Pat Tweed.
Ah. Yeah. Okay. I remember that now.
Oh.
So what did Jody? Was she just in
Jody played the maid and belted the heck out of that number. Wow. I mean, she did. She was really terrific. And so, I have some really great fond memories of all of this. And it was another Richard Lehman Thrash production.
So not to turn this into a name-dropping session, Jody Miller, Chad and Jeremy, any other names that people might recognize that you've worked with here locally that you can recall?
Oh, the local names?
Well, big names that you worked with locally, like Chad and Jeremy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, there's quite a few of those. Lyric, of course, brought in guest artists a lot.
Sure.
And now I am totally blanking on one of my favorite shows that I've ever done. It was also one of the smaller roles that I've ever done, but it was worth it. Was Woman of the Year.
How did you get to the Papermill Playhouse?
Auditioned like the rest of the world.
What motivated you?
A friend suggested that I throw my hat in the ring. And I think it was a variety of circumstances. I'd played the role at Lyric. I played one of the roles, which at Lyric Theater when Lyric did it. And so what they were looking for were not the main stars, because those were all names.
Of course.
They were all names.
Yeah, you got to have the marquee name to
You
bring
got
the
to have
people
the
in.
marquee. You have to have the Donna McKechnie's and the Dee Hodes and the Lawrence Guittards and the Tony Robertses and the, those people.
Yeah.
You have to have that
Right.
to make it really work. And but they were looking for people to cover roles. There are characters in the show that are also part of the olders. It's for those people who don't know Follies, you're dealing with two eras. The eras when everybody was young, doing the original, it wasn't the Ziegfeld Follies, it was the Weissman Follies, but definitely like that.
Sure.
And but there were all these other performers. We were the older girls that weren't stars. And so they needed those people that could play the people coming back from the reunion that had been part of the troupe but were not the stars. And so, I really thought there was not a chance in hell. But darn, there was. And I think one of the things in my favor was the fact that I had done that role twice and could understudy Ann Miller, who played it in the Papermill production.
Okay. So tell me about the Papermill Theater. Where is it? Is it an equity house?
Oh, yeah, big time.
That's what I thought.
Big time regional theater. And they've developed a lot of shows that have gone on to Broadway. And
Are they in Connecticut?
No, in Jersey.
Jersey. Okay.
Milburn, New Jersey.
Okay. How far from New York City is that?
I'm trying to think. I don't know the actual mileage.
A train ride.
But it's drivable.
Okay.
And they had vans because most of the cast lived in Oklahoma City, New York City, that other big city. Anyway, most of the cast lived there. And so they had vans that depending on where we were all living at the time, different vans picked up at different locations, and to drive us in. One night, our van, well, you had to go through one of the tunnels.
Of course.
To get off Manhattan Island.
Yeah.
And to get to it. And of course, there was a wreck. Not involving us,
Right.
but stalled us totally cold. And the time is going by and going by. And our driver, who was an employee of the theater, and our driver kept talking to them because it wouldn't have been a horrible big deal like if I hadn't been able to make it at all. They'd have done some switching around of a few lines and life would have gone on. But we had a couple of the principals in our van. And, it was like, and, we were all trading makeup and trading,
So you were,
we were getting ready.
Yes.
So
So you could get off the van and get onto
get
the
on
stage.
the van and get on the stage, and literally that's what happened. She wasn't in our van, but there were, in addition to the ensemble that is playing all of the performers from the past in all those glorious costumes, you see them first, the ghosts. You see them first. And then we open on the reunion, and this other performer and I were the first two to step out on stage. Well, I'm still in that van.
Uh-oh.
And literally, they had an assembly line. We pulled up 5 minutes before showtime. 5 minutes before showtime, walked through. You were taking off clothes, putting on your costume, putting on the wig, everything. And I think we started 3 minutes late. Wow. But it was...
It was exciting.
It was exciting. So, those are some of the fun things about working in the big city.
Yeah.
Big city. But it was an incredible experience and one I will treasure the rest of my life.
And how many Papermill productions have you been in?
Just that one.
Just that one? I
Yeah.
thought you had done several.
Nope. That was it. My one and only claim to fame.
All right. Did you just not want to go back, or did you audition and not get cast?
Well, I didn't audition. I didn't, once you've done something like that, you have to face reality. I was lucky.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes luck holds and sometimes it doesn't. But you have to realize how many incredible performers there are in the New York City area.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
Of all elevations, whether it's ensemble or supporting or starring, they're all there. Why would I? This just happened to be a quirk of fate. I just really don't, I will be grateful forever, but no, I knew better.
Carpenter Square Theater honored you several years ago as our volunteer of the year, I think it was, in our Best in 10 10-minute play festival. And I had the honor of writing a 10-minute play that featured you. Do you remember that?
I remember that very clearly. I do.
It was
in
called...
fact, when I was getting this stuff all together to kind of get my memory going again, I ran across the script for that. I still have it. I throw nothing away.
Good for you. It was called Backstage Drama.
Uh-huh.
And when I heard that you were the honoree, I thought of what can I do to show off Billie's talents. And so the listening audience now will get to hear an excerpt
oh my gosh.
of that play.
Well, that's scary.
And here it is. We'll be back in a moment.
Jordan, dear, tell me about your play.
It's an adaptation of Disney's 101 Dalmatians.
Disney. They've ruined the theater.
I love their shows, and I have tons of souvenirs from
about the merchandising. That's not theater. How many other Broadway shows have you seen?
Well,
So that was Billie Thrash in a 10-minute play, an excerpt of a 10-minute play that I got to write for her for Carpenter Square Theater's Best in 10 back in quite a few years ago.
Well, and, you know, I mentioned Jane and Martha. There's someone else who was very important to Carpenter Square and important in my life, and her name was Suzanne Charney.
Oh, Suzanne, yeah.
And I don't want to. I knew if I started naming names, I'd leave somebody out.
Well,
so.
and Suzanne and Charlotte Franklin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, grand ladies, grand ladies.
I've been lucky to have been in the same world with them.
No kidding. No kidding. Clean Cup. How did you start teaching at the university level?
Well, this was after I'd had a little bit of theater experience, directing and doing all of that kind of stuff. And I was brought in, I'm trying to think what year, because I started teaching in 2000.
Okay.
Before that, Carveth Osterhaus, who was he and Tamara Long were head of the music theater department at UCO, then Central State University.
Right. But they were at OCU first, though, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they
made the move.
They made the move to start the program there. And this was several years after they'd been there. But Bill and I had known Carveth and Kay forever.
Right.
Okay. Just as friends. Carveth and Bill worked several projects of Lee Allen Smith's, the Diamond Jubilee show, all of that. Yeah. Carveth is a director. Bill is a TV producer. So they were all buddies. So I knew Carveth and Kay very well. And I'd gone to see all the shows, but I'd never thrown my hat in the ring to either teach or, I was busy doing things. Anyway, Carveth hired me a couple of times because he knew I knew a couple of the shows they were doing. He knew I knew them pretty well. And they cast me as a guest director. I wasn't teaching there, wasn't doing any of that. But then a couple of years later, Bill and I are sitting in LaGuardia Airport on our way back from having a fabulous trip to New York City and seeing what was going on in the world. And my cell phone rang. And it was Carveth. And unfortunately, this was sad news. Tamara Long was ill.
Yeah.
And she wasn't going to be able to complete the semester. Would I come in and do it? And I did. And because I had known, of course, Tamara as well, and was happy to do it. What we didn't think would happen is that she would pass away.
Right.
And then when I was brought in as an adjunct, not a full-time, person. I did have my master's degree, so.
Oh, good.
During all of this other stuff that I was doing, I went back to college at Central State.
Right.
And got my master's. What the heck when you don't have anything else to do, and Bill was really, really busy. So, but that's, so in 2000, I joined the staff, the faculty, but it was adjunct faculty.
Right.
I did 2 years as full-time faculty when Greg ran off to finish his doctorate.
Okay. Greg White. Who now runs that program.
And so I took over sort of semi. I don't think I had the title, but I was doing the work.
I know how that is.
So anyway, I was full-time those 2 years. But the rest of the time I've been adjunct, which suits me fine because I had all these other things I wanted to do. Full-time faculty in the music theater division or any theater department is heavy duty.
It is.
It's really heavy duty, and I just didn't want to have to do that.
Are you doing any teaching these days?
I just finished a semester at the university and directed this last academic year. Of course, I directed one of their shows, the musical City of Angels.
Oh, nice.
And that was a project because it was in February. Does anybody remember what the weather was like in February?
I do, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and the university closes when the weather is really awful. If the university closes, you can't rehearse. I mean, it's not just the courses and the staff.
It's everything.
It's everything. No thing.
Right.
And we're in Tech Week. But I had a great staff. I had help from the university, and the students knew the work. I mean, they were ready to go. It was just working in all that silly stuff like tech.
Right. Which is, the lighting cues, sound cues. And
all of that, all the recorded stuff that had to be put on and all of those things. And then working around the Jazz Lab schedule. Because they were also going to have to make up things.
Oh.
So, we were going, what do you mean we can't rehearse that night? So, it was, but we did it. We made it. We had to do a weekend of 2 shows each time, and we got them all in.
Good.
And I was really pleased because the cast deserved to be seen.
Yeah.
They were really good.
What's next for you?
I have not a clue.
Are they coming? Are you?
I probably won't be teaching next year.
Okay.
They've changed how they schedule their courses, and so I'm probably not teaching next year. So my life is an open book right now. We shall see what happens. I've had open books before.
Yeah. I certainly want to thank you for sitting down with me and talking about your history in Oklahoma City and elsewhere. Carpenter Square Theater certainly owes a lot of a debt of gratitude to you for what you've brought to us. This podcast, by the way, is sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater simply because they let me store my gear in the rehearsal studio.
One does with what one can.
Exactly.
You do. So,
exactly.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. And, I was really a little worried about all of this because I was going, I am the age I am now. And as I was going, when I couldn't come up with some names, I was going, well, good grief. Do you realize how many decades ago that was?
This podcast is edited by Fred O. Bishop. This has been a Lippert Media production.